Good afternoon and welcome. A very small crowd here, but an engaged and involved crowd because Rta Chishti ma'am has her own fan following among enthusiasts of the textile traditions of India. And so does Bappada, of course. I mean, no one needs to say that. So I shall jump straight off into the interaction because I'm sure such an audience will have questions. So I have to leave time for your questions to be answered. Its title, the session is titled Textile Tales, the Glorious Past and the Future Challenges. So we cannot not talk of which aspects of the Indian textile industry you find most glorious. This I ask to both of you, if you want to answer, ma'am, or you, whoever. I think
Rta, you're the best to start.
We are at a stage, very, very interesting stage in our history because we are at, we had a multi-level economy. We had a slow economy and a very fast-growing economy. And we are trying to industrialize in 70 years what the rest of the world did in 250 years, and at a very high human cost. I'm not against industrialization, but I'm saying that if you have to industrialize, then you should take the person who is a very highly skilled person, who's a spinner or a weaver or a cultivator of raw materials, whether they be silk or cottons. You should be able to take them higher in the skill ladder, in their skills. So when, though the British ruled from Kolkata at first, the areas that were destroyed in terms of the fabrics were Bihar and less so Odisha, because Bihar, Bengal and Orissa were the greater state of Bengal till 1905. But what was very interesting is that in the 70s or the 60s, when the Nehruvian vision and all my earlier colleagues here, Rudrangshu and Ashish Nandiji, were talking about the Nehruvian vision, when he started the industries, whether they were Hindustan Aeronautics or HMT, they were all, he reduced the educational levels required of children of weavers, children of jewelers, children of high-skilled professions. So he said, I don't need any formal education. At that time, the requirement was 8th class. And he said, if they came from high-skilled professions, I don't care if they have no formal education. I will give them the formal education while they are with us. That brought them into the new industrial area. But what we are doing now is we are throwing out people with high skills into much lower skills. If you can give 120 rupees under Narega for 120 days a year, guaranteed, for breaking stones to make roads, you can surely give better than that to sustain high skills. So my justification is, my fact is, you could be the only country in the world which has a multi-level economy, a fast lane and a slow lane. And we are in a position to sustain the slow lane. At the moment, we are cultivating cottons and silks in 4 states, which is North Maharashtra, Vidarbha, Haryana and Punjab for UP, because they have sugarcane growing, and sugarcane areas are no good for cotton or silk cultivation, and Andhra. So in these 4 states, we are cultivating from the raw material to the end product, cleaning, combing, carding by hand. Every loom, every hand loom requires 6 to 8 people to clean, comb, card, and spin, and another 6 to 8 people required on cultivation. So we can give 16 people at least, if we were to give them earning, which was justified. They would stay in their own homes instead of coming to the cities as daily wage labor, living in the slums. And that's the whole cycle that one is trying to revive. Plain cloth weaving, I again think, is not very justifiable by hand. It's patterned weaving, which is the basis of all development, whether you use it for your clothes or whether you use it for your home or whether you use it for anything. And why the sari became a passion for me is because it is a different density in its various parts, the body, the borders, the pallus. They usually had 2 pallus because it was worn without the blouse and petticoat. And the Bengali sari, of course, was always without that, and you had to wear a chador over it until the hot iron came, and the hot iron made it transparent. Otherwise, it was all concha and heavily starched. And that's what so the sari became a basis for all kinds of textile developments in India. So I think your first question and your second question are related, that anything can be made, and I have literally seen with the Vishwakarma exhibitions, the finest coming alive after 30, 40, 50 years. You just have to have the will to do it and the money to support it. I'm at that stage in my life that I've done it for 35 years, and I'm trying to put together a younger team that can carry this on. Bappa, whatever you
Before I ask Bappada to,
Yeah.
ma'am's given us this overall insight and overview of the entire scenario that's been playing out. So not just and you can see that she's working, because it's not that the past that she even wants to mention. She's like, this is the struggle that we are facing now, this is where we need to go. And you could sense that totally. Bappada, where do you come on
I
that?
totally agree with what she said, and I have nothing really new to add, because this is the challenges which we are facing at the moment. And I mean, what she said about the whole, wage structure and the fact of labor migration which is happening. And it is interesting, I just want to add that the government right now, just a couple of months back, they had done a survey where they figured that another 15, 20 years, there's going to be a huge reverse migration happening because of job automation happening throughout the country. And they're all wondering as to what would this huge workforce do once they go back. And craft is the only way forward. It is the only solution where if you know to work with your hands, to create with your hands, you can earn a decent, living.
We hear all the time the challenges that we know that you face every day. We have lower priced copies. I'm sure many of you here in Kolkata and who've visited elsewhere will have heard Bailum Chari being sold, right? In a non-Bailum space, whether digital or physical. So you have lower priced copies. You have Palum, right? And of course, like you said, no incentive, like you mentioned, ma'am, no incentives for continuing with traditional skills. So we understand that that is the actual reality and the challenges that you face. Moving forward to that reverse migration, then, and you said that craft is the answer. So there is all this talk, right, about slow fashion, ethical fashion, sustainable fashion, organic yarn, khadi, natural dyes. So can we, as a nation and as people in the industry, work towards making that the USP of the Indian textile industry in times to come?
Yeah, I think that is becoming the USP as more and more with time going, people are getting aware with slow food. There's a whole slow food movement. Along with it, the slow clothes movement has come hand in hand, and where people are getting aware, although they are not as knowledgeable as we would want them to be, but then still there is an interest where people are trying to find out what sari am I wearing, is this, is this that. There is an interest which is coming up, which, when I go for my exhibitions, I get to interact a lot with women who wear saris on a daily basis, and there is an interest which is coming up, and which I think is very, very positive, then they're trying to be aware, although there's a lot of misinformation in, I mean, Facebook, as you said, the social media, anything is up there. I mean, whether it's powerloom or handloom, there is no way to differentiate unless you're an expert. So, but then I would say there's a still, I would still look at it very positively, where people are sitting up, like my mom's generation, they didn't know what they were, I mean, wearing. They were more happy when suddenly Garden Vareli came with synthetic saris. I mean, they were happy to dump the, I mean, handloom and pick the Garden Vareli, because that's what they thought was very chic. But now I think today younger generation is, I mean, waking up to the textile heritage that we have and the variety, the versatility, and people are taking notice of it.
And is that what we can be to the world as well, a source of...
Absolutely. I think what India, if you look at the export market, India, what exports is hand embroidery, the most, and then textiles. So yes, definitely India is still, for the West, a place where, and so many people come from abroad to work with handcrafted textiles, whether it's printing or embroidery or weaves. The best of the designers, before we started Bailu back in the year 2002, me and Rumi, we used to work in a textile export firm where we would do a hand embroidery, and it was for Armani, Gucci, you name the top brands. So all the top brands, they come to India for handmade, handcrafted textiles. And India, the USP of India is definitely that.
Ma'am, I'll come to you with a question, because we mentioned Paaloom, we mentioned, what difference do you think the GI tag, the craft mark, the made in India, the handloom mark, how much of a difference do you think these have made to the purchase patterns of buyers?
Well, they've made very little difference because people don't look at a tag and say, but the interesting thing is, I'm really for supporting all that goes slower and slower, because you go finer and finer. If you're competing with a quantity of production, you're not really competing with China, you're competing with Taiwan, you're competing with Philippines, and all of Southeast Asia, which is militarized economies, essentially. And they can take a decision today and implement it tomorrow. China, in fact, for 10 years after the revolution, burnt the entire silk crop to standardize the filament length of mulberry silk.
I can't imagine.
They could do that. They wanted a worm that could produce 1,000 meters or more of uniform without being disturbed by a single irregularity, which can be fed into a machine. And interestingly, in the last 15 years, they have been buying tussar from India, from Thailand, from Vietnam, Cambodia, and they're selling us back machine reel silk. Now, what is very interesting is, the first 500 or 600 meters of a cocoon can be put into a machine. It is after that that it begins to have a slight protuberance. This is what breaks, that goes to the machine. And it has to be thigh-reeled on the thigh or on an earthen pot, a wet earthen pot on which it can be rolled. What I'm saying is that if we give wider employment and justifiable earnings to the 15 or 18 people we can give a proper employment to in the shade of their own home, we can be the world monopoly in hand-spun, hand-woven. There is nobody who can produce the range and variety that we can. But somehow, the government thinks, and so does the Khadi board, think that these processes are too slow. And we want to quicken the pace and join, as I'm telling you, get on the fast production wagon. And while the world wants to get off it, the world wants to put us on it, and we also, with our aspirations, want to go on the fast bus.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think the government, the people sitting in the decision-making room are not equipped enough to actually understand the craft. That's the basic problem I find in all the government policy making, whether it's the GI, whether it's the GST, the way the GST was implemented, or the way the demonetization happened, like as you, like Rita would, I don't know how she would
well, you were
react
allowed,
to it.
when you had demonetization, you were given 24,000 a week, which you could withdraw from your own account. When you went and stood in the line, you got only 4,000. When we got only 4,000, can you imagine when I transferred the money to the spinner or the weaver in the village, what he got or what she got? She got not even 500.
And so
literally
many of them never had any account. I mean,
and
to
literally
start
what
with.
we had to do for the first 4 or 5 months was put somebody in a train with the payments and send them to that village. After that, the accounts were opened. Now with GST, there's a 5% tax on hand wovens. The Khadi board, only the KVIC supported, who get grants from KVIC, only they are exempt of GST. Anybody else doing Khadi is not exempt. So for that 5%...
No, I think they don't recognize people apart from the Khadi board who work with Khadi as, I mean, so, working with Khadi. So there is a basic division there.
Right.
Well, I mean, I would just like to add a little bit here that during the demonetization, I think this is what, if an organization practices good business, what should be done is that we, from the beginning, we started training them because we thought that we really wanted to teach the grassroots how to do what is good business practice. And what we did, we had already opened long time back their bank accounts, and all our money that was transferred, we made it a policy that any weaver who wants to work with us has to open a bank account, has to have a trade license. We did all that. So luckily, during demonetization, the weavers who worked with us, the 1,200 weavers, they were not affected. But what we saw around in the village, because there are more than lakh of weavers in Bengal, was pathetic. I mean, it was really, really sad.
If I may share a story which touched me deeply, and I just came to know this about 2 months ago. My home help, she's from Pulia, and what she said was, "Jokon poisha shob batil hoye galo," which means when, I mean, she was talking about demonetization. So what happened was, whoever was working with them, they sent money to their Mahajan's bank accounts. So the Mahajan said that, "We'll take it and we'll give it to you." And they never got anything.
That never comes out. That is the Mahajan system.
And they said, we had 3 handlooms which were given to us from Taat, they call it Taat. Taat ache amar barite. So we had 3. We had to sell off 2. And my son wants to sell off the last one as well. I'm just kind of trying to hold on to him. And that's why I've had to come out to work, because our looms are gone. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's no. I mean, কেন হয়েছিল কিছু বলতে পারবে দিদি? না, তোমাকে ঠিক বোঝাতে পারবো না. I will not be able to explain. So we know. I mean, we probably, if you ask questions to the people around you who are working, you would find that many of them are weavers as well, especially in Bengal. And to just tie up with Mashi, as I call her, and the craft mark, and what ma'am said, doesn't really make a difference. Does to some of us, because I've been gifted saris, because I wear saris, Rta handloom mark ache, so you take this. And then my Mashi takes a look at it and says, "This is Pa loom." I said, "How do you know?" So she says that, "I know because of this, and this." So I take it to a college, NIFT, where I also teach sometimes, and I show it to the experts there. "Is this Pa loom?" So they say yes. So I said, "Where did the craft mark come from then, the handloom mark?" They said, "Kinte pawa jay."
Yes,
which means it is sold.
Even the handloom mark you can buy.
Sorry, I meant the handloom mark. They said, "Kinte pawa jay." So just, I mean, there is actually no guarantee.
Absolutely.
Loom is actually nothing but mill machinery, outdated, and when they're getting new machinery, they sell this to areas, to handloom areas which have electricity. So and now in the Khadi story, there's another interesting aspect to it. the khadi story, which used to be hand spun by the turning of the right hand and the drawing out the left hand, that charkha also has been thrown out by the Khadi Village Industries Board because they say it's too slow. And it was ideal for the short stapled Indian desi cottons, which we had 80 varieties of. We have less than the seed of 20 varieties with us now. Partly because, and where are these 20 varieties available? They are either available, every temple, outside every temple there's a bush from which they light their oil lamp. That's one thing that they will not change. And the second is the sacred thread, the spinning of that thread. So they keep a couple of bushes outside the temple for that. So in many areas, it is these which keep the cotton story alive and from which we can get the seed. For the new varieties, you have to actually buy the seed every year. So the cotton was traditionally, by the way, never grown by the acre. It was grown between one line of dal and the upper mound, one line of cotton, and the second of chili. One was nitrogen giving, one was nitrogen taking. That was the principle of cotton. All the cotton needs of the family were fulfilled by the cotton that was growing on the upper part, because that received less water.
Yeah, drainage.
It's drained. So this, and what is a short staple cotton? A short staple cotton is less than 20 mm length of the fiber. So, but what is its speciality? Its speciality is that it has much more, in Hindi we call it ant. Ant meaning unevenness. It's a little bit like us ourselves. We have a little more character, and that's what gives it the sense of personality. Whether you are a Punjabi or a Bengali or a Uttar Pradeshi or a Tamilian, this ant, even two fibers can interlock and make a thread. You can't do that with hybrid varieties and with BT cottons because they are even and longer filament lengths. They're like more like silk filaments. And that's why they are suctioned into a machine which spins them at a uniform speed to give them a uniform, winding per running inch. Whereas the hand spinning can be done only with these uneven varieties. We have the seed of more than 20 varieties left now, and these are the varieties we are working with. So it's only time. Now, today, for instance, I was just telling them that Mother Dairy has announced that in 3 months' time they will be selling organic vegetables and milk. If they have scaled up to such a degree, we can surely the next step should be organic fiber. Because you don't have a shortage of land, you don't have a shortage of labor, and you just have to do it on that scale. But it is not the scale on which I or Bapa can do it. It has to be done on a much larger scale. And I'm now trying to find those people who, of a younger generation in their 20s and 30s, who can take it up and have a business sense much more than I did. I learned it all on the ground from weavers and spinners who can scale it up and make it viable and much cheaper than what I'm wearing today.
Yeah, I think there is a demand, but the supply is not enough. Like,
Right.
for instance, I have been hunting, organic cotton yarn for the last 1 year, and it's impossible. I can't get even a kilo, I'm of it. And coming to a question about powerloom, the problem of handloom and powerloom, I think design intervention is the key there. We have to create products where powerloom is no match with handlooms. Yeah. So I think that's where what she's saying, to go back slower and slower. The more finer work we do, the more intricate work, the more of hand spinning, the more handloom is going to survive. Because design, we all complain, like what she said in the beginning, is that just plain weaving is not, doesn't make much sense for handlooms. Powerlooms is like, I always, put an example of agriculture, where agriculture initially was hand plowed, then the cows came in, and today there are tractors. So there will be a progression. So, but we need to find what is the niche of handlooms, and we, by design intervention, we can create things where handlooms, I mean, totally stands out.
I would like to say one more thing in this constant thing of the spinning. We have the mechanized ambar charkha, which was made and invented by a man called Ekambranathan in 1942, 6 years before Gandhiji passed away. And he showed it to him. It was turned by a hand. It had 2 spindles at that stage. Today we have ambar charkhas with up to 32 spindles. Naturally they cannot be hand turned because the lady will get a crick in her arm doing that. So she puts a 100 horsepower motor to it. Now, I'm not against any process, but it should be a clear process. It should be ambar charkha 32 spindles, cost should be so much. Hand spun by hand by desi charkha should be so much. That lady should get at least 20 times the value of the mechanized ambar charkha. As long as we are not telling lies in the name of Gandhiji, please, let's be clear about that.
Rita, I think even the whole concept, like it's a fashion to wear khadi nowadays,
Yeah.
but the whole concept of khadi where people, they put millions in the
Yeah,
warp,
absolutely.
and the weft is khadi and call it a khadi. So it's not a khadi.
It's not
The
khadi.
whole definition of khadi, it has to be hand spun,
Yeah.
both warp and weft, and it has to be hand woven.
Yeah.
So people very conveniently use these terms to their benefit and get away, because there is so much of less information out in the market.
Yeah.
Ironic that we sell in the name of ethical fashion what is so unethical. And this is where I want to bring in social media.
Yes.
Double-edged sword. I mean, you have, like you said, women are more aware, younger women more aware. They want to know what they're wearing. They want to talk about what they're wearing. And this almost frenzy is somewhere fed unethically as well. I mean, that's what I feel like, but I would want to know what your views are. Bappa the first.
If you want the 500 meters in a month by hand, it can't be done. So that's where people are cheating and using the mechanized one and supplanting it, because the demand and supply is very imbalanced at the moment. What I'm trying to say is that you can make it viable because you have everything going for you which can sustain the slow process and can make it organic and sustainable for people who produce it, and the market is much bigger, because how much can the quantity be if it is produced by hand? You will always have a world market for it and an Indian market for it, for the wealthy here and the wealthy everywhere else. It's just that it needs a vision and it needs a scale which individuals like us cannot do.
Which is why I want to ask, what is it that you want the government to, to do?
I think
in
the
respect
government
of
should stay,
policies?
just stay in governance and not enter production.
No, but in terms of policy, in terms of
No,
policies
I think first, coming back to the earlier question about the media, social media, it's a really, I agree with you, it's a double-edged sword, where one side, it has really opened up easy access to the market, where people can reach out to the target customers very easily. At the same time, there is a lot of misinformation which is also out there. So I think it's for people like Rita, me, and people now who has taken up handlooms and handcrafted textiles as our, like what she said, that about being conscious. I mean, consciously, I think we need to create that platform where we can impart education, we can educate our customers as to this is how you should, like say for instance now the entire market is flooded with this strange fiber called linen.
Linen.
Which
Oh, yes.
is not linen, but it's linen. which is actually mixed with viscose. I mean, in the fiber form, and then the fiber, we buy pure, I think, linen from Jayashree Mills at, if I'm buying it for 5,000 rupees a kilo, that particular, I mean, linen is available in the market for 800 rupees.
I have to ask you a question. Wherever I've seen saris advertised as linen, I've just thought of it as a typo, or that the weaver, poor thing, didn't know. And I thought it was linen. I didn't realize that Lenin?
Yeah,
okay.
So it is where, and everybody is buying it because they are thinking they're buying linen. So these are the kind of things which, I mean, social media has really hyped and fired, and it's out in Facebook, it's out everywhere.
So buy the Lenin, but not the Lilin, is what you're saying. If they spell it as Lenin, it's okay. If it's Lilin, no, if it's Lilin, then it's actually Lilin and not linen. Okay.
I'd like to say one more thing about linen. Linen was autumn and spring fiber for Europe, largely, because it had that kind of warmth. It is not a fiber for India, where it's 10 months warm to hot. This is perhaps the only month in the year where we are a little cooler, and maybe January and December. The rest of the year is warm to hot. And we have put linen into saris as well. And my only reservation about it is that it's a very good for suiting and coats and jackets and fitting fabrics. It's not ideal for saris because it creases very easily. So after about 2 hours of wearing it, it looks like a duster, you know, a jharan, because it creases so easily. I mean, it's become a popular wear of saris.
Well, you could say it's a look. I mean, I know you won't agree with it, but yeah, it's a look.
Yeah,
I could give you a better crushed look.
Absolutely, I know.
If you want a crushed look, and if you want the torn jeans, they could be also done without actually tearing them that way.
But I think a lot of, there are textiles where you're mixing silk and linen, which kind of handles that crease.
The blending,
yeah,
the weaving structure,
what you put into it, the degumming process as well, probably.
No, there's no degumming process in linen. It's a blast fiber. So, but then the weaving structure, I mean, the blend that you do, the reed count, everything kind of adds on to the fall and the feel of the fabric.
I really think we are at our most with globalization, the television, and our opening up of Netflix and access to the whole world.
Television is becoming obsolete now. It's the phone.
Yeah, even the phone. We were, I think, post-independence, we have produced more NRIs in India than the British produced in 250 years. In these post-independence years, we have become a more imitative culture. And I'm discussing this with Sadhguru Jaggi Vasudevji, who is the flavor of the season. And I think he's a wonderful person, but I think he can, and what he's saying is exactly that we have lost the culture of thinking for ourselves. Thinking for what suits us, for our climate, for our body shape, for our body form, which God given, even if you went on the treadmill for 4 hours a day, you cannot become Deepika Padukone.
Yeah, don't we know that?
And gowns have come into Indian weddings.
Yes,
so
and the gown malfunction is more tricky. What? Yeah, because she's from age 4 an athlete, first of all. Yeah, no, she has, but she has a 5'9" height, and she has a athletic background from childhood. From childhood, she's been doing her practice for 4 hours a day anyway.
We'll take questions later,
Yeah.
and opinions not really. Thank you. But to come back to the challenges that we are facing, but I still will go back, just like all of us textile users, whether home or to drape on our bodies, we have this wish list, this bucket list. You must be having a wish list for the government, the policies. Yes, they should stay with governance, but since they are the policy makers, I will pin you to this question, Bappada first, and then Rta Di. What are the policies that you wish to see come into,
If you really ask me, I've
I
always
do.
steered away from any government policies, any government, I mean, whatever they do various things. I've always steered clear. I've never taken or applied for funds, loans, nothing. Because I feel, I think the problem with the government policies are, I mean, there is a lot of money which is being pumped actually, but then what is happening that it never percolates down to the grassroots for whom actually it is being, pumped in.
I call it pouring water into sand holes.
Yeah, true. I mean, I think people who have worked like her and me, who have worked at the grassroots, we exactly know what actually happens. And so for people who really want to work, make a difference and work, for like, say for her, for us, we have always steered clear away from government policies because I've seen they in fact do more harm than actually they're trying to do good. Like for instance, giving away free the looms. They give away free looms.
No, they've given subsidy
for training
of 80,000 to 1 lakh for any handloom weaver to convert to Palum.
Oh, they've done that? I didn't know
Yes,
about
they
this.
have.
And that is in the wonderful constituency of Varanasi.
Varanasi, yeah. So, yeah, but then I think the implementation, if it was well done, would have made much more impact. As for, I think what the government should do is create or pump in money into basic infrastructure like roads, electricity,
No, I
water.
think they could also create yarn banks.
Yarn
for
banks.
instance, banks for raw materials, where they can be collected. People can go and purchase raw material easily.
Rita, they have tried to do that, but then the yarn actually is sold off in the market at a higher rate than weaver is supposed to be getting it at a subsidized rate, but it never lands up in their hands. So I think what should be done is more development of infrastructure would mean accessibility to remote parts would be better, and for them to come out and to to go and work or would be much easier.
Before I throw it open to the audience, just one question. How do we as users of textiles support you and our weavers? With that, that's my last question, and I'll open it up to questions to the audience. How do we as users support our weavers?
I think educating the user is one of the greatest priorities, and I think that's a lot of what media can do, and I'm going to start putting out videos with spinners and with weavers who will have their say and educate the buyer and the user. I have brought a few samples, but while we're answering questions, I'll put them out, and you can see the difference between hand-spun and non-hand-spun.
Questions, please. Yes, there's a lady there with a mic.
Hi, good evening. I run a textile export company for home textiles, and one of the issues that I face in terms of furthering hand embroideries, hand woven, hand printed textiles is design, because the world stage truly stops valuing hand done textiles at a point where the pricing starts moving beyond a certain limit. And that's where design comes in, and design and innovation can further that and bridge that gap. So I'd like to hear what you think about the design education in India today, the state of it, and what role that can play in bridging the gap that you've been speaking about today.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I believe design can't be taught. I mean, it's a very inherent quality which you are born with. You can't teach anybody how to design. But coming to your question, I mean, not exactly a question, but your problem that you face about quantity selling, right? You said that's exactly what both of us we are trying to say, that if you are using handcrafted textiles or using hand embroidered or hand woven bases, you need to educate your buyer about the problems and the quantity that you can supply at a certain amount of time. Like when we export, we do a lot of export with our hand woven scarves and handmade quilts and hand woven bases. So we work, I know it's very difficult to explain or make the Western buyer understand the problems that we face in the village, but over the years we have gathered people who appreciate and who give us that time frame and the leeway to work with our problems. And so that is the way, if you really want to dedicatedly work with handcrafted textile, that is, I think, for me, that has been the only way where I've chosen and found out the people who are ready to accept our way of working and not always obliged to their way. That's, I would say, one way. And about design education, I feel you really can't teach anybody design, but yeah, I think what she and me, both of us, we agree is that there's a requirement to educate the buyer, because these skills are very, very special skills that we have in India, and they are not available anywhere in the world. So when they want to access to these textiles, they need to be educated more than the weavers, because me as a person, I never educate or I never teach my weavers any new skills. I work with their skills and I work with their existing parameter, and then I try to recreate a product. But yes, design intervention really helps, whereas you can contemporize a particular look. You might not want to sell it the way it is being woven at the moment, but then you can contemporize it.
The interesting part is the directory of design, traditional design, is so vast that whatever step you take forward, you're always looking backwards to go forward. And that's something that Martin Singh, whom I've worked with for 35 years, always said, that you're always looking, because the directory is so big. So if you're saying, what's your next step? Is there something going to be anew in it? It's very, very rare. Even though he headed 7 Vishwakarma exhibitions in this country, which were the finest, and each one of them had 250 commissioned textiles, he always said, it's very hard to surpass all that we have done in the past, because the directory of design is so vast that we're always borrowing from it to go forward. And there are very few of us, or none of us, who have, I think, the honesty to say that we have designed something. And if we haven't had that honesty, you can't take a step forward anyway.
As a user, I have to say something here. Bappaditya Biswas started the pom-poms beautifully, which has later led to weavers thinking that it is those that will sell. And they put pom-poms onto anything and everything, spoiling perfectly beautiful handloom saris. So design interventions have to also be made sensitively, explaining how the process goes forward. It's not just putting, "Eita bikri hocche bole dhukiye dilam," just kind of imposing something on something. It has to be carried through to the entire process, to the purchase point as well. Questions? Any other questions?
Right. The next question, since I've got a, have they also got a mic?
Yeah, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. All right. So I am a great fan of Bailoom, and I buy saris there all the time. No doubt you've seen me there all the time. But yeah, I came in just a little late. But talking about the linen saris, I have a question about the linen blouse pieces. Now you see, it's a hot country, as you also mentioned. And if you're wearing it for very many hours, then of course you're perspiring and you need to wash them immediately. It is not possible to dry clean them, which means that we are hand washing them. Now with experience, I find the saris are, good, they're lasting. the blouses don't last at all. So
That's
am
why
I
I think initially when we
doing it
started,
wrong?
we used to not weave blouses with the sarees.
That's the question.
And we used
Two
to always
questions.
let people experiment with because as
Right.
you want cotton next to your skin and not any other fiber in summer.
That's correct.
So yeah, I mean
Yeah.
for people who buy, sell and buy both need. That's what I think it has been coming again and again. That education, the need to educate the buyers, I think now is very, very important.
Okay, so what you are trying to say is ignore the blouse piece and make the blouse with something
No, what
else.
he's just saying is
Probably.
also read up on the care of the textiles that you put on your body apart
That
from
is
just
the other
buying.
question. Thank you.
If we can get to you. Yes.
This question is for you. I knew you've dealt with this problem. Can't hear? Hello, can we hear? Okay. Recently I came across this story about
Sir, you
this
need to
lady.
move it closer to your mouth, I think.
Recently I came across this story of a lady who's a weaver somewhere near Shantipur, and she wants to get rid of a loom because she's running it on finances which she has, she's borrowed the money from a Mahajan, and she's repaying him at the rate of 17% per month. So obviously she can't run, and she would rather get rid of the loom and become a housemaid. Now I know you've dealt with this problem. How does one deal with this problem of finance, of basic
You should be in
finance
touch
for
with
these
her.
people?
No, yeah, I think when we started way back in year 2002, I've seen at the turn of the millennium, I've seen handlooms being sold off as firewood because that was more profitable to sell it off rather than sit and weave in it. There has been a change after that. There has been, a lot of people has now gone into handlooms, and I mean, everybody is trying to do their bit in their own way. But yeah, the problem of finances still looms large in there because they're also used to that old Mahajan system that they can't, like when we started working with them, initially they used to not, they would tell us if they earned say 400 rupees in a week, they would tell us you give us 200, keep 200 with you. Because they thought that we were better banks. I mean, they would never want to go and deposit money in the bank because they thought once the money went into the bank would never come out. So yeah, but there has been a change. So I think it is important for people who are working to be sensitive and to be, we have to work that extra mile to educate them about their finances, having them open their bank accounts, training them with accounting. And yeah, but what you said, the problem is still there in the village.
I hope, sir, you're not recording this for anything but a personal. Pardon? Person.
We have time for just one more question.
People like us get into trouble also.
Josh, you have a question? Yes, we'll take that after the last question and we'll move it because we have our next panel waiting as well. Any other questions? We have time for one more.
No.
No? We are good?
Fine.
Anything that you would want to say as a closing address?
No, just,
yeah, okay,
you can come up and see. I've got a hand-spun, hand-woven here, and here with a jamdani, with a 3 shuttle, with a plain loom, and I've got a silk by Khadi, but by the Ambar Charkha, 150 counts, made in Bengal. But woven
Why
in...
are you pointing at me?
Because the cotton is Ambar Charkha.
So it's me.
Well, there's no organic in Bengal.
Yeah, that's true.
There's no possibility for organic in Bengal either. This is Khadi from Andhra, cultivated in the same area, hand spun on the old charkha, and woven with 3 shuttles.
And that one?
That is silk warp from Karnataka with Bengal, cotton from Bengal, Ambar charkha, and pure silk borders. I wish I could weave it in Bengal, but they're not willing.
The 3 shuttle, I think they have started back though.
That's good.
Okay. Anyone? Anybody else who wants a feel of these beautiful saris will have to take this off stage because we have another very interesting session coming up. Thank you, Rita ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you, Bappada. Thank you for being here, listening to Textile Tales. Josh, we'll ask your help in getting us all off stage.